Hey, it's Colin. I'm here with my review for the newest episode of The Mandalorian, The Convert. Before I get started with my review, if you haven't watched this episode yet, please watch it first because this review will include spoilers. With that warning out of the way, let's just get started talking about The Convert. This episode was definitely more of a slower burn than last week's episode of The Minds of Mandalorian. Not nearly as action-packed. Still very interesting. But not quite as entertaining as the last week's episode, which honestly I don't think really was the point of this week's episode. This is more to kind of set up, I think, events for the rest of the series, showing what's happening on the ex-Imperial side. So I think it's an episode that's needed, but I don't think for many people it will be like their favorite episode or anything like that. But I still found it very, very interesting. Get started with, we go back to Mandalore, and I was excited about that because I was a little afraid we would just fast forward in the action and Bo and Din would be on their ship leaving the planet, but we're right where they left off, and quickly we get an answer to a question I think a lot of people were wondering about. Would Bo tell Din that she'd seen the mythosaur? And you know, I think he got that feeling right away when Bo was asking Din, did he see anything down there? And he basically quickly admits, no, I was basically out of it the entire time. I didn't see anything. So I think in some ways, you know, like she's trying to, like, did I see what I thought I saw? But I do think she believes she did. And then she's like, I'm not going to tell him. This is going to be a secret. So I'm kind of curious to see, at some point, this is going to come out in the series. I'm kind of excited to see when it does. I haven't really figured out in my mind yet how I think that will happen, but I do think it will happen. Another very interesting moment that happened when they were leaving the planet on their ship, and both Bo and Din say, this is the way. And on cue, Grogu makes some sounds that are very different than what he normally does. So much so that Bo and Din turn around and look at him for a couple of seconds and then think nothing of it, turn back around. I think they're clearly setting up that Grogu is going to say something this season. Obviously, last week he had the tease that Peli said, like, oh, I think he said something. So I think they're very much teasing, oh, is he trying to talk? Is he trying to talk? And I don't think they would necessarily do that without a payoff, because I think otherwise it would make a lot of Star Wars fans very, very mad. So I do think he'll speak at some point. In my mind, I hadn't really figured out what I thought he would say, but after this week's episode, it wouldn't shock me if his first words is, this is the way. So we'll see. We get back, as we're heading back to Bo's place to get Din's ship. Suddenly they're attacked by some TIE defenders. It was a very cool moment. Cool dog fight there. I really enjoyed that action sequence of Bo and her ship, and then how Din's ship is so much faster than everything else. It was really, really cool. Sadly, Bo's castle / home is destroyed. The Imperials bomb it. Kind of curious to find out more who is behind that. I think we're later in the episode, it's kind of maybe implied who we think might be behind it, but I'll get to that a little bit later. But definitely, if Bo is already at a low point, this makes her even at a lower point. And I also think her seeing the mythosaur is making her question about, you know, the stuff that I was discounting about being a Mandalorian that I thought was just, you know, made up mumbo jumbo. Maybe there's some truth to that. But we leave the Mandalorian storyline a little bit and we go back to Coruscant, which I'm so excited. I absolutely love Coruscant. That was one of the aspects of Andor I really enjoyed a lot, getting to see more of Coruscant. So any excuse to see more of Coruscant, I'm all in favor of. Before I get to the plot, let's kind of talk here. I would say one real cool moment, because I know I've seen this depicted in books before, is when they go to the park and they see the top of the mountain, which is basically the last remaining part of the planet surface that can still be seen. So I mean, that's such a mind-blowing moment, and it's a really good way to give you the scale of the city-wide planet that is Coruscant. Because you kind of think if that happened on Earth, and like you could actually walk up on a sidewalk and be level with like the peak of Mount Everest or something like that. That's mind-blowing. I thought that was a very cool moment. But kind of get to the plot, what we're covering on Coruscant, we get to kind of explore the New Republic's efforts to reincorporate ex-Imperials into society, into the New Republic. So we see Pershing, our doctor from earlier seasons of The Mandalorian, And we also see Kane, who was the communication officers under Gideon. The episode really is following Pershing and his attempts to be a valuable part of the New Republic. You can tell, and we got the sense from the Mandalorian. He wasn't exactly happy at the Empire. So he seems like he's really wanting to do good, but he's frustrated because the New Republic has basically forbade him from pursuing his research into cloning. And early on, I think we get a sense that Kane is going to be a bad influence because she's kind of just, encouraging, well, maybe you pursue your research. If it's that important, it'll actually help the New Republic, and that will be good for you. There's also a line very early on when they're talking to some other ex-Imperials, and somebody mentions, when they find out that they served under Gideon, it's like, what happened to him? Like, I heard a rumor he escaped. No, that's not true. He was sent to the Mind Flayer and stuff like that. So I think they're implying, Gideon might be free again. So that's going to be very curious. I'm kind of leaning towards that direction myself, but we'll see how it goes. But Kane definitely is encouraging Pershing to kind of pursue his own research. He finally decides to. They go to the shipyards where some Imperial Star Destroyers are being stored so they can get some equipment. And during this, they are captured. And very quickly, during their capture, Kane makes it clear, like, oh, I set you up. And she was actually an agent, which was a very cool moment. And seeing the devastation on Pershing's face was amazing. And you also kind of see, like, probably how he fell in the Empire. He's very easily manipulated. So I'm sure the Empire initially, when they recruited him, it's like, oh, you're going to do good. This is all this great stuff you can do with your research. And kind of like slowly just pushed him and pushed him and pushed him until he was doing research for their evil purposes. Very much, it's like Kane is definitely still on the Imperial side and is just taking advantage of the New Republic. We'll see how that goes. I think the point that probably makes that very clear is when Pershing's receiving his treatment on a repurposed Mind Flayer. It's supposed to be a very low setting, but when Kane's the only person in the room, she cranks it up to quote, Spinal Tap up to 11 to really destroy his mind. I think we're going to assume. I'm thinking she's doing that because she wants to cover or destroy the knowledge that he knows, so the New Republic doesn't know what Gideon and the Empire was fully up to. So I really believe Gideon's still out there and that she is still in contact with him somehow. If not Gideon, then some of his allies. Overall, hopefully that leads to Thrawn. Because being a big Thrawn fan myself. But with that sequence on Coruscant taken care of, we go back to Din and Bo. Din takes Bo to his convert now that he can show the armor that he's bathed in the living waters, and now that Bo has nowhere to go since her home was bombed. They make a point when she get there, you kind of realize, like, oh, she hasn't taken off her helmet, because Din even mentions something to her like, oh, just don't take off your helmet around here. Other than that, you should be good. Din gives the living water the armor, and she confirms he's been there and he's a part of the covert again. And then when Bo mentions, like, yeah, I saved him out of the waters, and the armor asks, have you taken off your helmet since then? And she says, no. Well, like, you've been redeemed as well. You're welcome to stay with the path as long as you like. You can leave anytime you want, but you're a part of our group now. And you see all the other Mandalorians come up and start welcoming back into the group. And I think this is a very interesting point to leave it at, because you're wondering with Bo, I think there's two distinct possibilities, and at the moment I'm not sure which way she's going to go. One, while they're in the group, she can continue to work on Din and she'll let this group is not the way. This is a cult. This is not what it means to be a Mandalorian. We can forge a new path, or like a lot of times with a new convert into a cult. And Bo's definitely at her lowest point. All her allies have abandoned her. Her dream of uniting everybody to rule Mandalore has been destroyed. Her home has just been absolutely wiped out. Stuff she assumed was a myth has now been confirmed when she saw the mythosaur. She's at a very low point. And this is the type of people that cults recruit because they're at their most vulnerable. So I think there's also a chance she can quickly become a true believer and almost be more diehard in her beliefs than Din is. So we'll see, because maybe at some point later in the season, it's not Bo that has to rescue Din from the group or get him out of it. It's Din that has to get Bo out of it. So we'll see how it goes. So overall, I enjoyed this episode. Not nearly as entertaining as last week's episode, but very interesting and very thought-provoking. So let me know, what did you think of the convert? Did you enjoy it or not? What are your predictions for Bo? Do you think she'll become a true believer, or do you think she'll get Din out of the group? If you enjoyed this review, hit that like button. If you have yet, please subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate the support. Thanks for watching. I'll see you the next time, and may the Force be with you.